Logic 0, example 9.1, translating natural English into Pseudo-English. Okay, so now this is the real hard part. How do we get normal natural English into symbolic expression? Okay, so we have a new lookup table, and here this is not as easy as doing translation from Pseudo-English into symbolic expression or symbolic expression into Pseudo-English. The Pseudo-English from chapter 8 should be very straightforward and not complicated. I mean, the Pseudo-English sounds strange, but the procedure for translation is just place this with that, just step by step. With chapter 9 here, when we get into natural English, the procedure is not as step by step. So you're going to have to think it through and really think about the meaning of the natural English a bit more to get the translation correct. But one thing that helps is to start with natural English, translate that into Pseudo-English. And if the natural English and the Pseudo-English seem to have the same meaning, then you're basically done, because it's very easy to take the Pseudo-English and translate it into symbolic expression. So that's what I mean when I've been saying Pseudo-English is a kind of bridge to translating natural English into symbolic expression. First, take natural English, put it into Pseudo-English, and once you feel intuitively that the Pseudo-English is saying what the natural English is saying, then you just translate the Pseudo-English into symbols, which is just one for one, and then you're done. If you try to skip directly from natural English into symbolic expression, a lot of things can go wrong. And that's what makes translations typically so difficult. This added step, the bridge of Pseudo-English, dramatically improves the accuracy of representing a natural English sentence in symbols. Okay, so let's do this example. We're going to take this, we're going to translate this into Pseudo-English. And we need our extended lookup table. So here we have this, and I will replace this lookup table with that because all the information from the previous table is in this new table. Okay. All right, so now this translation process is going to be a little more difficult. It requires a little bit more sophistication. And you're going to have to rely on your intuitive understanding of English to get the translation into Pseudo-English correct. So you're going to have to, there's going to be some trial and error here. You're going to have to try something and see if it works. But once you get a Pseudo-English translation that does work, intuitively, you should have a gut feeling, yeah, this Pseudo-English is, essentially the same meaning as the original English given. So we're going to take this sentence, I ride my bike to work if it isn't raining. And we're going to translate that into Pseudo-English. So I ride my bike to work. Okay, that sounds straightforward. So let's just leave that. And then we have this if construction. And we look up in the lookup table and we see, oh, here is that construction. It says yada, 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 if, et cetera, et cetera. So the yada, yada, yada part is I ride my bike to work. We have this comma if. So that's this right here. And then we have et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's these three dots, right? So now, one thing that in this table that is shown is that we can make this into an if-then sentence. So really what this means is that we can, and this is kind of makes it easier. This is how we sort of step by step, or, attempt by attempt, sort of trial and error process, get it shaped into something that's easily translatable into Pseudo-English, is we're going to do if. Now, the tricky part here is that if you have if in this natural English construction at the end of the sentence, the if stays with what comes after it. So really what we're going to do is to take this and change the order. And that's one thing that's tricky about English grammar, is that there's a lot of variability in the ordering of things. And so we want to just kind of standardize the ordering. That's sort of one pass to get us closer to Pseudo-English. And then the final step is to really use those strange sort of phrases that are in this middle column area here, is then getting it all the way into Pseudo-English. But with this yada, 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 if, et cetera, sort of natural English construction, we can make it into if, et cetera, then yada, yada, yada. See how I changed the order? So if it isn't raining, if it isn't raining, I'm going to copy that and I'm going to put this here. If it isn't raining, then I ride my bike to work. All right, so I'm going to make this a capital and I'm going to make that a period. So notice how the if stays with it isn't raining. And then the then goes with I ride my bike to work. So when we go from yada, 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 if, et cetera, and we're going to do that into if then, it becomes if, et cetera, then yada, yada, yada. Okay? And so that's one tricky aspect to this translation process. So make sure you tune into that. Okay, so I'm going to leave this as a partial translation. We haven't gotten to Pseudo-English yet. Let's leave this if-then. Portion right here. But this isn't part. Let's sort of deconstruct that a little bit. Let's make this, it is not raining. Okay. So we can keep that. Then I ride my bike for work. Okay. So what I'm saying here is this original English sentence, I ride my bike to work if it isn't raining, means the same thing as if it isn't raining, then I ride my bike to work. And hopefully that seems okay to you. As you'll see in the textbook, I kind of explain how maybe the original intent of the natural English was different than what we're coming out with logically. But that's sort of part of what we're learning in logic, is that sometimes people don't say things as logically as we might like when we're thinking logically. And so we have to, the interpretation kind of, requires a lot of charity and giving a charitable interpretation to what people are saying. But logically, this is what this sentence is saying. If it isn't raining, then I ride my bike to work. So I look out the window. If it isn't raining, then I get on my bike. Okay, but there's more about that in the textbook. You can read through that. Then I'm saying that this next sentence is also equivalent in meaning to the original. If it is not raining, then I ride my bike to work. And I've just changed this contraction of isn't into is not. Okay. Then we can look at this not, and we see in the table that we have yada, 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 not, et cetera, becomes it is not the case that. And, the table doesn't exactly explain how this translation works, but this is what the table is suggesting, is that we say if it is not the case that it is raining, then I ride my bike to work. Okay. If it is not the case that it is raining, then I ride my bike to work. Notice that the Google Doc is saying, are you sure you want to use this grammatical construction? Because it sounds weird, but that's the nature of pseudo-English. It sounds weird, but it is technically grammatically correct. Okay. And now what I'm saying is that this fourth sentence here is equivalent, at least in logical meaning, to this third sentence, which is equivalent in logical meaning to the second sentence, which is equivalent in logical meaning to the first original given sentence. So we're sort of taking it one layer at a time. Okay. Now let's look at this if then construction. We've converted it into this, and this then comes across in pseudo-English as only if. And so what I mean by doing that is to do this. It is not the case that it is raining only if I ride my bike to work. Now, if somebody said this to you, it is not the case that if it is not the case that it is raining only if I ride my bike to work, you may not even understand what they're saying. But the fourth sentence here, I think we can still follow and feel that it is equivalent in logical meaning to the given sentence. And then this last part is where it gets a little sketchy, because now we've actually translated it all the way into pseudo-English. And, again, pseudo means phony, false, partial, artificial. And And we can feel that artificiality here is like, it doesn't quite sound right. But this pseudo-English is really needed to get the symbolic translation correct, as we will see. So this is our answer. It is not the case that it is raining only if I ride my bike to work. That's the pseudo-English.